She's Katie Sutton. I'm Jimmy McKay. And we're giving a Future of Rehab Therapy Summit preview. I'm in DC. You will be in DC shortly. And this is an event this is the first time they're doing it. They've done some things like this, like innovative talks. You were on stage for one. What was that? What was that one called?
Oh, yeah, that was the Future of Physical Therapy at the Centennial, 2021.
So that was a couple years ago.
But
the idea is get a bunch of people in the room who all have a vested interest in what the future is going to look like. Let's put some people in the room who might have some ideas. They're going to present those ideas. And then the future is actually going to be something close, but not exactly what these people predict. If you look at history, that's sort of the way it works.
Probably.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's set the stage here. So we're entering a future. I was doing some research where more people will need therapy, and we're purposefully saying therapy and not physical therapy because this is the future of rehab therapy. So
rehab therapy.
The presidents, the CEO, presidents of the APTA, but also AOTA and ASHA, which is occupational therapy and speech therapy, will be there. So we're sort of looking at this and saying, like, we're going to be affected by the same things.
Yeah.
Our successes or failures will be tied together. How will we solve this? So more people will need therapy than ever before going into the future. Every single day, more people will be over the age of 65 than under 18, or some statistic I saw. Aging populations, chronic conditions, and also in a good way, a growing area of interest of movement health. Like, people are trying to be healthier than
ever. Yeah.
Whenever I was actually looking at
you can find it anywhere. It's at everyone's fingertips now.
Right. I was looking at a statistic of the average drinking use, and it's declined every year since 1991. Like, the average age of when people start drinking and how much they drink has declined, which is it just shows the ineffectiveness of telling people not to do something when you have to just create the culture around it of why we don't do that. And I'm using air quotes, like we do this, we don't do that. So if you want people to stop smoking, you need to create a culture around it where that's not what we do. Not finger wagging or putting restrictions or making cigarettes more expensive. That stuff doesn't work. So more and more people will need this. And yet, dun dun dun, plot twist, fewer and fewer people are choosing to become physical therapist assistants. Is it? I'm not actually sure if it's the same for OTAs, or speech therapists.
Yeah. I mean, from the trends that I've heard in higher education, it's across the board. It's not just a PT issue that we're going to be dealing with. This is across the board. This is definitely, we're seeing it in healthcare. And maybe that's because we're so close to it that we feel a little more anxious about the fact that there's going to be less humans to fill these roles in the future. But I think across the board in general in higher education, again, if there's less people to put butts in the seats in universities and colleges, then we're simply going to have less people graduating. So, I mean, yes, definitely a healthcare problem, but also a higher education problem, period.
Well, those two things are tied together. And then the rudimentary math is demand is going up, but supply is going down. So you're in higher education. You're paying attention to this. Let's start there then. Why are less people who are, I'm going to use air quotes again, why are less smart people choosing these things to go into? They're not even entering sort of the conveyor belt of choosing this as a major, going through education, graduating, and then figuring out what part of the professions they want to be in. Why are they just simply not making this choice? What have you seen and heard?
Well, I think it's varied, and I don't know that my problems are the same as the problems that somebody's having in a different state. But to me, I think students are just sharp and wise. Like they have more information at their fingertips than ever. And we say this all the time, right? I mean, so this is true in their educational process as well, but they can find other things to do. People are choosing to not go to college altogether. I mean, there's influencers that are making way more money than you can being a PTA, so there's a lot of different reasons why somebody's going to look at any profession and say, well, unpacking, you were talking about unpacking not that long ago, right? About unpacking a job. Like, you go through, you kind of look at all the nitty gritty details of that job. And is this something I really want to do for the rest of my life? And this is the wage I'm going to earn. And this is the trajectory of the career. So people are looking at these things, and it's not always attracted to everybody. Now, I think that people who really do desire to have that true connection with a patient in the, I want to help people. I want to give them a future and function and things like that. I think those people who are truly in it for that stay.
So let's talk about unpacking. I don't know if that's something we talked about. I think we talked about it just offline. But unpacking was this article I found. It was actually called "Face It, You're a Crazy Person," and I sent it to you. Did you think I was calling you a crazy person when you first saw the title of it? Okay.
Yeah. No.
And I'm not really sure why he Adam Mastriani titled it "Face It, You're a Crazy Person," but he said he meets a lot of people who don't like their jobs. Or when he asks them what they'd rather be doing, they 75% say something. And have you ever said this? They've said, I don't know, I would love to run a little coffee shop or something. And it's just weird how that or bed and breakfast or something always comes up. And I think people, for a couple of reasons, I've said this because I like going to coffee shops.
Yeah.
I think people like it because it seems like a big enough business that you can make a living on it, but not so huge that you can't sort of see other parts of it. It's not going to be a multinational corporation. No one says, I want to start the next Starbucks. What they say is they want a coffee shop.
One. Yeah.
They feel like coffee is something a lot of people feel like they need. So there's demand.
Mm-hmm.
And if you provide the supply, you can make a business off that. It feels like it's net positive. Like no one, outside of like multinational like Starbucks or something where people don't like how they're everywhere. A coffee shop. No one's protesting a coffee shop opening up in town.
No. You feel good in a coffee shop.
You feel, and when you leave, people are like, so it makes me think of this image, which I've talked about before, which is Ikigai, which is a Japanese concept of reason for being. So you need 4 things. So I feel like the coffee shop, why I want to become a barista or own a coffee shop, it checks off 4 of these. I was going to say boxes, but really they're circles.
Yeah.
So it's do what you love, what the world needs, what you can be paid for, and what you're good at. So here's the problem that Adam actually unpacks or asks people to unpack when they say, I want to do something like I want to open a coffee shop. He says, I asked them, what kind of coffee mug is the best? How much does a La Marzoccoa espresso machine cost? Would you bake your blueberry muffins in-house or would you buy them from a third party? What software would you use for your point of service? And none of these are things that people talk about when they want to open a coffee shop. But what he's displaying is the outcome or the thing that you can see, the sign of a coffee shop, the smell of the beans, is not actually what most of the job is about.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it is about decisions that have nothing to do with coffee. It's staffing people. What happens when your best barista calls in sick or quits? Like, that's the job. So that's where we went on a little tangent of like unpacking. So he talks about unpacking, like take apart the job. Because we've been asked this since you were 5 years old, right? What do you want to be?
What do you want to be when you grow up? Yeah.
And people just instinctively answered to make the big, tall adult person happy or leave me alone. And then you're asked that when you go to college. So I think now that we understand unpacking, if you had a student sitting in front of you that was going to apply to your PTA program and says, I want to be a PTA, that's perfectly in line with, I want to run a coffee shop.
Mm-hmm.
How would you help them unpack what a day and a career as a PTA looks like? How would you what would you need them? Because what I know about you is what you don't want is to get that kid, we call them kids because they're adults, but they're kids.
Way younger than me.
Way younger. You don't want to get that kid signed up and then 10 years down the line realize that the unpacking that needed to be done, what the job was actually like, didn't look like the name or the title. Mm-hmm. So what is it? How do you unpack being a physical therapist assistant for people?
Well, first of all, I think this is something that anybody listening to this podcast right now is going to recognize is that there's this perception, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later on, that we only work with certain populations or that we only do aftercare or that we're only following that injury or that surgery or something like that. So there's definitely that public perception that somebody thinks I'm going to go into physical therapy. I'm going to work with athletes. I was an athlete myself. Like that's the story that I hear a lot is I had PT myself. And so, this is why I want to do it. Every once in a while, you'll have that person who's like, my experience next to PT was a person who had had a stroke in their family or an older adult, and you might have them see that inpatient side, but typically it's more the outpatient side that they are recognizing and understanding when they come in. And so to me, it's a conversation about, you're going to see very sick people. I have this conversation with students who want to come in and do pediatrics. And I'm like, kids get sick too. And it's not always pretty. You might be on the floor in the cafeteria, and you might be crawling around on the gym floor, and it's disgusting and gross and things like that. Like, we have to kind of really dive into what it really looks. Smell good all the time. We work with things that are kind of gross. We touch feet. We touch all of these different, parts of the human body, and are very close to it. So I try to have those conversations with students when they're coming into the program. And I'm very clear about that in class as well. But I mean, is that enough? I don't know.
I mean, it sounds like you Fight Club them. Have you seen Fight Club?
No.
Okay. Well,
I know what it is, but
so Fight Clubbing is they create this club and someone wants to come into it, and they're essentially just trying to weed people out. They're trying to convince more people that this actually isn't what you want, because what it looks like from the outside, it ain't it. This is a lot of hard work. This is all those things. I mean, my former career in radio, people would just say, like, that's awesome. You talk on the radio. That's the greatest job in the world. That was a decent percentage of it. But what people didn't see, the feet or the covered in whatever or crawling on the floor, was when you have a bad day in your life, and you had to not bring that bad day to you, that you're having to work, and you had to sort of be up, or when you don't want to do or whatever. I get to go to really cool concerts. Yeah. Like, for every really cool concert I had to go to, I had to go to 50 events that were not that great, I wasn't in the mood. So unpacking those things, and to be dead honest, I don't know that I unpacked becoming a physical therapist as much as I should have before I went into it. I mean, I did the whole, shadowing. I think that's number one, is asking yourself, after the sheen wears off, is this something you want to do? Seth Godin is a writer. He calls it the dip. And he's like, at the start of anything, you start here. And then every once in a while, doesn't matter what it is, there will be a dip. And he called it, like other people have called it, the suck. Like, there will be the dip or the suck that you have to get through. And if you like the thing enough, you can have enough momentum. I always pictured like driving a car through like a creek or a river. It's like, how much you like something is how much momentum the car has, because when you hit that creek, it's going to slow a lot.
Yeah.
How much do you like to keep kicking to get to the other side, to make sure you can keep going? So I think number one, unpacking and understanding if it's right for you. Or can we also, this is what people want to do, and part of the future of rehab therapy summit, how do we change the profession, or how do we change the jobs? I've talked about in a recent live stream, one of my co-hosts, Anthony Maritato, Tony said PTAs are an unused weapon. Instead of the PT having to, quote, do everything, which would burn you out. Like, could you utilize PTAs more? Does it make business sense? Does it make human sense? Does it make quality sense? And he says yes. And this is a guy who's run a PT clinic for years and years and years. This is the suck that he's decided to embrace. And he leans into PTAs and says they're not utilized enough. It makes sense for your business, sense for your patients, sense for your well-being.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that we're going to see a lot more leaning into PTAs coming up here in the future. APTA just released a study, I think. Please don't quote me on that, but it wasn't that long ago.
Podcast, we're quoting it. Keep going.
Okay, yeah. On the shortage of PTs that are coming up. So there's going to be a shortage of physical therapists. And we already talked about there's less humans going into higher education and definitely in physical therapy and healthcare professions. So if we have a shortage coming up, how can we fix this, right? So we know we have this whole chunk of physical therapist assistants that could easily, I shouldn't say easily, but like they can bridge or go through a traditional DPT program and become a physical therapist if they wanted to, but we've made it so complicated. I mean, you still have to get your bachelor's degree, and then you still have to apply. And even if you go to a bridge program, it's not like it's any shorter or different. It's just you're in a cohort of PTAs that are becoming DPTs as well. And that's not to knock either type of program, but what I'm saying is, why can't we make this a little bit easier? We know we're going to have this problem. Can there not be a multi-entry type of system here? Like, can you come into the profession as an associate's degree PTA, or a bachelor's level PTA, or a master's level PTA or PT? Is there something in between that maybe I don't become a doctor of physical therapy, but I can be a master in physical therapy instead, or something like that, so that we can kind of bridge that gap? I mean, nursing already does this. There's already a roadmap out there.
Yep.
So if we could somehow alleviate some of this restriction that we have on getting PTAs through this system, we might be able to fill that gap a little bit, and maybe we can fix things to some extent, such as burnout and perception and things like that. I mean, your patient, when you're seeing it, and informed consent and all of these things, and you're going to make sure that you introduce yourself as a PTA, but my patient doesn't always understand that. So they're like, oh, you're physical therapy. They group me together. Most of the time they group us with like OT2,
Correct.
So like, in their mind, I'm a professional that's coming in to work with them for physical therapy, the same as you coming in to work with them for physical therapy. PTA.
They're looking for the outcome, which is what we teach in communications and business, which is don't really sell the how, but we love, in healthcare or science, we love selling the how. We love overselling the how. We love selling the features and less on the benefits. And we love turf. So talking
titles,
about turf,
we like those titles and words.
We love it. We love to show off what we know. I'm guilty of it myself. And we can't not talk about the elephant in the room, which is how we get paid, or our value financially. And we could have a whole different conversation about value being financial or non-financial. Our value is dictated by someone who is not in the room, which is a system that is known as the third-party payment system, which should anger you, which I didn't understand it before I came to healthcare. And now that I'm here, I feel like I understand it even less. It is convoluted and confusing and values certain things over others. I think the more that we can understand the system that we're in, by all means, try to change it. But realistically understanding, like, through our lifetime, it probably won't change a whole lot. So then the other route, because right now the only way to get paid more in a third-party payment system, well, there's a couple ways. One is see more patients, but nobody signed on to do more work, because there's a law of diminishing returns, right? After X number of patients, X plus 50% is going to bring you 50% more money, but it's also going to kill you. Like, you're going to hate doing what you're doing. The other route, or one of the other routes, is innovation. And I feel like that's a lot of people in the conversation at the Future of Rehab Therapy Summit that we're going to this week.
Agreed.
Entrepreneurship and innovation. You're going to see a lot of people doing different things, or doing the same things different ways.
Yeah.
Those things could or should be viable paths for PTs and PTAs to financial freedom, because that is part of the math equation that people are doing. What are you excited to take a look at in terms of who do you think's doing it well?
Who do I think's doing it well?
Like, innovating, even if it's not something you want to do, like, who do you look at and you go, yeah, they're pretty innovative, they're pretty cutting edge?
Well, I don't know that I can just throw out some names, but I think that the tech companies that are trying really hard to get into healthcare and show the value and the benefit. I mean, you work for a health tech company too, right? I still hear so much pushback on some of these innovative technologies. Yeah. And I'm like, man, we've got to lean into this and leverage it.
I will give, there is a lot of pushback, right? I will attempt to explain why. I feel like, because I've only been in this profession for less than 10 years, people have been pitched and promised for so long, and they've been burned. So they are on guard, which makes complete sense. Like, of course, when you're a bright-eyed, bushy-tailed new PTA or PT, you're like, look at this shiny new thing. And I remember bringing those things to my professors in PT school and having them take a breath, and look at the promises that is.
Seen that before. Yeah.
And you're like, no, this is new. This is innovative. And then you watch how the cycles of innovation go. But instead of looking for the things that's going to 10x, looking for the 10% improvements.
Yes.
And that's where I think that if you're looking for a panacea, one solution that's going to absolutely change everything, don't. Anybody who promises you that, run away from it.
No.
Somebody who's promising you 10% improvement or improvement over time, that's a little more realistic and more likely to happen. So I think
and there's small increments, and that makes a difference, right? Over time.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about the tech company. We don't have to like give a pitch, but like if clinicians are saying administrative burden, that phrase was everywhere like 3-4 years ago. And then all of a sudden something else replaced it, right? I believe it was just reimbursement and burnout. AI scribing technology is essentially saying, oh, I see your administrative burden and I raise you this application that you can use today. And yet so many people are still very, very, very skeptical about if it's a good utility and good use of their time or not. I say go bang on one. Like there's 50 companies, go try one. The one I work for is great. Go test drive a bunch. Trust me, they'll love to have you. On the other end of that would be like automations, like using the technology to augment the thing that it can't replace you, and say, okay, you're telling me your time is your most valuable asset. The only thing you can't replace, I can give you 20%, again, not 100%, watch for someone who's going to promise you the world. I can give you 20% back, and to still watch people be skeptical of it confuses me. And that to me explains the lack of progress.
Yeah. Well, and I'm looking at the list of industry partner presentations that are going to be there, and all of them have some type of digital or online or AI type of EHR scribes, all of that. Like all of those people that are going to be our partners are leaning into innovation, which is obviously, this is all about the future of rehab therapy, right? But all of these things are only going to give us that 5%, that 10%. And that's enough. That's enough to help decrease burnout and help fill some of those gaps that we're dealing with in the profession.
The funny part is, and this is where I get to like sort of hold my colleagues in healthcare accountable. If you were at a backyard barbecue and you were complaining about back pain to the guy who was hosting the party, who was grilling, who also happened to be a PT, the PT would of course lean in and be like, hey, listen, come to see me in my office on Monday. I can help you. And the person with back pain is standing there in the backyard and saying, I'll just Google a YouTube video or I'll figure it out or it'll get better. And that person, the PT would obviously be mad. The PTA would be mad. Like, I have this knowledge and the ability to help you and you're just refusing. At the same token, I feel like healthcare for so long has pushed away on everybody you just mentioned, which is like technology or just any industry outside our own. We just said, we're going to solve it ourselves. So we would do the exact same thing. Imagine the person with back pain was, an engineer for a computer company where that PT could have said, yeah, if I hire you, I could solve my problems. It's a Mexican standoff. I think now people, I don't know, maybe it's just the moment that we're in. I feel like people are more, at least beginning to be more open to adopting the help or the ideas of things outside of healthcare. We do not improve unless we do. I will die on that hill.
Yeah. Well, I think our good friend Sky Donovan said that a long time ago. If we don't start looking outside the profession, we might be missing the boat.
Yeah, I always like to play a game where like Nike just launched a thing called Nike Strength Club. Essentially, they're like brick and mortar gyms, for lack of a better term. 10 squat racks with space for 2 people at each squat rack, 3-4 classes in the morning, and then like 3-4 classes in the afternoon. And you should be annoyed as an outpatient or a sports physical therapist that you're not doing this model. And I'm not saying nobody's doing this model, but what I'm getting at is, instead of being mad at Nike for encroaching on our territory, why didn't you do it before? You needed no permission whatsoever. So every time I see someone come into our turf, I was in a Facebook group, which is the worst place in the world you should ever be. And I was listening to someone or watching someone. They put up a screenshot of a personal trainer's ad or flyer. And they were saying, the personal trainer was saying like, prevent bone density loss and osteoporosis, like using those exact words.
Mm-hmm.
And the physical therapist was like, who do they think they are? And I just simply asked a question that was never answered, by the way, because it didn't fit the narrative. My question was simply, do we have some sort of ownership over
Yeah.
osteoporosis? Like, do we get to own
Mm-hmm.
this? And I feel like a large majority of our profession would be like, well, of course, we own that.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
don't.
Mm-hmm.
You might have insight into how to treat it. It might
Mm-hmm.
be part of your professional duty, but you don't own it. So instead of being mad at that person, be like, wow, they said the thing by name.
Yep.
They
Mm-hmm.
went to those people, and that person might run a profitable business doing something they love, actually running the coffee shop how they want. And our first instinct was to crap on it. And I
Mm-hmm.
find that defeating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that we own a lot of spaces.
Yeah. The last big problem is PT has a perception problem. And
Mm-hmm.
this is something that I get on a personal soapbox about, is people like to look and wag their finger at the APTA. I don't work for the APTA. I've been a member for a long time. This isn't a perception problem. Just like we mentioned at the top of this conversation 25 minutes ago, to change culture and perception is not a one person thing.
Mm-mm.
It's not like, changing health behaviors in society doesn't happen overnight. It's not one organization. It's an everybody thing. People love to wave their finger at the APTA and say, how come they haven't solved this? They can't. Also, the APTA is a bunch of people, your people. If you haven't solved it, don't expect it.
Exactly.
But I think you can do it on a one-to-one level, just as I mentioned with that personal trainer saying, I help people prevent fractures from osteoporosis, come to my class.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way it'll happen. So you need to change how you're speaking, who you're speaking to, how often you're speaking, in what ways you're speaking. I think it's still a communications and a marketing problem that healthcare people think that they can out-science. I'll just explain to them that this is the best way and they'll do it. And that, in the history of the world, has never really worked.
Not usually. Mm-mm.
How do you explain the difference or the value from a PTA's perspective? PTAs have notoriously been treated like third-class citizens in our own profession for the longest time. It must exhaust you and your colleagues having to prove yourself and prove your value to other people in and outside of your profession. What do you advise PTAs in your classes to do? You teach like a professional development class, right? Does this come up?
Yeah, it does. I think that from my perspective, I've tried really hard to show the students the opportunities that I have had. But I also try to really recognize and kind of tip my hat to the work that had been done in order to get us here. Like students that graduate from the program that I work in now will not understand or recognize the challenges that other PTAs had 20 years ago because it's already been solved. But it was solved because somebody continued to show up over and over and over again and ask questions and rub elbows with the right people at the right tables and create influence and create a culture change. So all of those things had to happen in order for my student to graduate now and know that there's a possibility that they can run for APTA's board of directors in the future. Maybe, these are the things that I like to try to show students is look at the history, look at what has changed. The perception is different. That's kind of like where I lean into. And that's not to like pat myself or anybody else on the back, but I mean, the opportunities that I had came because I showed up and I started asking questions. Why can't? Why shouldn't? Why can? Why should?
All right, we're almost at a half hour.
Okay.
The Future Rehab Therapy Summit. By the time someone hears this, they're not going to be able to come if they're not already on the way, which is fine.
No.
We're going to be doing episodes on site. So the next couple of weeks,
Yeah.
you're going to hear from people who are actually on site. So let's do a parting shot, but do it in the form of a prediction. 3 years from now, right? What are the things that you think? What's the one thing that you think will change the most in 3 years in 2028?
Okay. So the things that I think, how many did I have to say? 3?
You could do more than one, but you have to do at least one.
I'll have to do at least one. Okay. So my prediction is that we are going to leave this summit filled to the brim with ideas, and then it's going to spark a fire in rehab therapy settings, and we are going to find creative ways to fill gaps. And this could look very different in whatever silo that we're in. But in my opinion, we're going to fill gaps with PTAs, codas, whoever needs to kind of step up into those roles to help fill. And I think we're going to start to see more of a trend leaning towards getting those 10%, those 5%. That remote therapeutic monitoring. This is a perfect space for PTAs. Perfect space. Just did an episode not that long ago. I don't think it's been released yet, but if it hasn't, it'll be coming out soon. That this is like prime area for PTA. So I think that there's going to be more of that coming out in the future. And again, this isn't to replace anything. We're not replacing our hands and that physical touch and physical therapy, but we are going to need to lean into things that are an adjunct that can get us that extra 5 and 10%. That's my prediction.
I think that I agree with a lot of what you say, but I disagree with it.
Okay.
Some of it. And here's what I think: a lot of people will get energized, and a lot of people will hear the conversations that we're going to share. And then a bunch of people will still begin, 90% of them will continue to do it the same way, but harder, or the same way, but bigger, or the same way, but green. They will just continue to do the same thing. Now, I think 10% will see the opportunity. I mean, that's just how that maths, right? Yeah. That's just how it'll go. So I think the people that actually lean into the unsafe things, the things that are not proven, while keeping the guide, like the North Star, in line. Like, traditionally we haven't been good at looking outside of our profession for solutions, right? I mean, it took us the longest time to actually have an EMR that was directed just towards our profession, like decades.
Right. Yeah.
Why was that not one of the first opportunities someone saw? So I think the future will be given, and it will belong to the people who will lean into the spaces that aren't touched yet. We're looking right now like an arms race on all these different categories. There are a couple categories I don't think even exist yet, but when you see the opportunity, like maybe somebody will spark an idea at the summit, the people that actually, the luck favors the bold is my parting shot. So I tell people, just because someone isn't doing it doesn't mean they can't do it and be really, really successful at it. So you use that however you want, because in my opinion, those people will succeed. All right.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's going to be a percentage of people who are going to take what's discussed and run with it. And there's going to be a percentage of people that it stays in the back of their mind, and they're going to sit on it for a long time.
Yeah, they're going to sit on it until it's worthless. Like the first mover advantage is something that's talked about in technology. It's like the people who see it and go first have a better chance. Doesn't always mean success, but better chance at doing something like that. So I'm looking forward to hearing the side conversations. Yes, I'm all about the presentations. Most of the time I'm in the bar looking and waiting to hear people and being able to push people and ask them, oh, you want to do this? Just like opening a coffee shop. Well, what about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this?
Yeah.
Let's see where that goes. All right. More from DC.
More from DC. Yeah. And like T minus like 2 days, right? Yeah. Wednesday, all the action starts.